would choose commas. So that's why we're starting there. Again, commas, most commonly tested. We've got this comma here. He constantly feels out of place, which I think some of us can relate to in our own writing. We feel like we sometimes misplace those commas. For our do now, in the chat, go ahead and drop your answers to these questions. Number one, how does the location of the comma affect the sentence's meaning? And number two, please write a short, not even paragraph, I didn't really mean that, like 2 sentences explaining the image, which is not showing up. So scratch number 2, just answer number 1. Let me click one more time and see if it pops up. Nope, okay, my bad. Answer question 1 in the chat. I'm gonna open it up so I can see what y'all are saying. How does the location of a comma affect the sentence's meaning?
Did you want us to type or speak aloud? Oh, chat.
All good. I don't mind speaking aloud though. I didn't mean to cap it. You can definitely speak out loud. I'd love that if you have an answer in mind.
You can, it also can indicate like if you do need it in the sentence, like if you were to take that part out, would it make sense? And if it wouldn't, you just put the comma so they know to pause.
Totally. Like Jasmine said, commas do create a pause in the sentence. And what, is it Jakisha talking? I think it is because Janisha, I think, said she couldn't come. So I think it's yes. Jakisha on the call is referring to is that sometimes commas create kind of borders around nice to have, but not necessary critical information. So kind of parts that you could lift out of a sentence without changing the meaning. Those are both great answers. The goals of today's lesson are to identify several different strategies to use in comma usage conflicts. And then we use commas for different purposes in several types of sentences. Those are kind of like ambiguous, but I'm going to show you exactly what I mean. Drop in the chat or speak out loud on a scale of 1 to 5. How confident are you on these 2 goals when it comes to comma usage more generally? On a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being I'm not very confident at all, 5 being I've got this. How confident are you when it comes to commas? And I see 2 other great answers that I missed in the chat, so thank you guys. I wanted to share that Darian said it divides a sentence relating 2 pieces of information. Sometimes, yes, you can divide up 2 adjectives. Chastity says the comma affects the sentence to pause, so there won't be any run-on. It can fix the run-on sentence with a conjunction, yeah. There, cool. Jasmine's at a 3. Thanks, Trinity. 3s, 4s, nice. Okay, so most of us are feeling pretty confident, which is great. This should be kind of a quick-ish run through and then a lot of time to practice. Just a couple things to review and check in, and I pulled these largely from what we did in the spring and from STEM Summer Institute. So kind of going back and seeing, I knew most of you would have attended at least some of that. If you're brand new, that's okay. Just use this review as a time to sort of check in and remember some things that you've probably heard in your English classes. So first thing, we're going to define what a clause is. You're going to hear me say clause quite a bit. A clause is a phrase with a subject and verb. So it's a phrase that contains both a subject and a verb. We never want to separate the subject and the verb. So that's important when we think about commas, that we keep the subject and its verb together, not separated by a comma ever. An independent clause is a clause that can stand on its own as a complete sentence. For example, I walked my dog, period. I ran after my dog, period. You've got your subject, I, verb, ran, and then your direct object, whatever is going on. Dependent clause, a clause that is not a complete idea, so it's not a complete sentence. Often these start with those subordinating conjunctions, like while I was running, unless I ran. These have to have a independent clause to lean on, and they're going to be connected to that independent clause with a comma. Semicolons. I'm just going to review these because they sometimes throw them at you in comma questions to kind of trip you up. So sometimes you'll get a semicolon as a choice within a comma question. So I did want to just briefly touch on it. Remember that a semicolon is just like a period. They join two independent clauses without a conjunction. If you could use a period, you could use a semicolon. Now the difference is that a semicolon is like a softer period. So think about it like the two clauses that it's connecting, the two independent clauses have to be really closely related to where they feel like a period's almost too harsh. Like it'd be better to just have a soft pause, not quite a period, because those sentences are really closely related. And just as a mental cue, I kind of wanted to include, some of you maybe have seen this or seen it posted on Instagram. People sometimes get a semicolon tattoo. And I think if you see that or think about it, it's just a way to make this stick in your brain. There's a program called Project Semicolon, which is a suicide prevention and kind of, they do also like addiction and depression. But they have this is their mission statement or their sort of tagline. A semicolon is used when an author could have chosen to end their sentence, but chose not to. The author is you and the sentence is your life. So oftentimes if people have a semicolon tattoo, the meaning is that they maybe thought about ending their life or had some experience with that, but didn't. So that's sort of just a way to make it stick in your brain and connect it to real life. I don't know if that helps anyone, but sometimes that's a way to kind of make this semicolon definition stick, thinking about what a semicolon means, maybe in a more spiritual or emotional way. And last thing to remember is that a conjunction, which are going to come up a lot here, is a word to connect words, phrases, clauses, or sentences. Some of you may remember those grammar rock, conjunction, junction, what's your function? If you're old especially, maybe Weller remembers that. Coordinating conjunctions you can remember through fanboys. That stands for and, nor, but, or, yet, so. Those are the coordinating conjunctions that we typically will see. And then subordinating conjunctions begin a dependent clause, and they are things like although, since, because, while. That's not an exhaustive list of subordinating conjunctions. We're actually going to pick up with fanboys, so keep those in your brain. Coordinating conjunctions, let's look at some examples. Commas are used with coordinating conjunctions to connect two independent clauses. So you've got this first example, the 5-foot gorilla lives at the zoo. That's a complete thought. You've got a subject, gorilla, what is he doing? Living. Gorilla lives. You've got a subject and a predicate. Comma, but it is originally from Africa. Again, we've got an independent clause. It is your subject. It is the pronoun referring to gorilla. It is your subject and predicate. It is originally from Africa. My music teacher from high school was at the restaurant, comma, and I ran over to say hello, just hello, well, as soon as I saw him. Two independent clauses connected with a comma and. Let's listen to this last one just as it sounds. We started the music and immediately the baby started to dance. Practice listening to those commas in your mind when you're reading or out loud as a nice pause. Give yourself a little breath, take a little breath there. And again, we've got those fanboys, which are good clues to let us know we're going to need a comma to help separate this independent clause. And an English tip, kind of going along with what I just said, a tip to keep in mind with the English test is it should sound right. If a comma causes you to pause your reading at an awkward location, it's almost always wrong. And when it comes to the ACT, obviously you can't be just reading out loud because you're in a silent test-taking room, but you can try the secret agent move and just kind of put your fingers over your ear, closing it, pushing on your tragus right there. And you can sound out comma pauses just by kind of whispering. You'll be able to hear yourself, but other people won't be able to hear you. Let's try some. And I'm going to come back. Let me get this pulled up so I can see some names, because I'm going to call on some folks to add a comma. When you read the sentence, just do like I did. Read the sentence and just read the comma out loud. So Jasmine, will you do number 1 for us aloud?
I prefer the color purple, but Kevin likes red better.
And where would you insert the comma?
Oh, before but, after purple.
Perfect, yeah. So again, Jasmine, no biggie. Just as an example, it could sound like, I prefer the color purple, comma, but Kevin likes red better. Noah, can you get number 2? And also,
you said B?
Yes, you.
All right. My grandmother came to America hoping to escape the terrors of war in her native country, and I'm glad she did because it was here she met my grandfather.
Where would you put the comma, Noah?
Hold on, let me read it by myself. My grandfather came to escape the terrors of war in her country. I mean, in between country and?
Yeah, exactly. Native country, comma, and I'm glad she did. Gabrielle, can you get number 3? And if you're not able to mute, if anyone's not able to mute, just drop it in the chat and I will happily read it out for you. Yeah, Gabrielle, can you type it? Just kind of retype the sentence, adding in the comma, and I'll read it for you. Sorry that I picked a long sentence. Hopefully you're a fast typer. You could even just type the part of the sentence around the comma. There we go. My friend Bella and I recently took a ballet class, comma, so one night we went to the Base Performance Hall to see a show by the ballerina Christina Haranoff. Perfect. Remembering our fanboys, the comma goes before the so. Perfect job, Gabrielle. Thanks for participating. Darian, can you get number 4?
The man paid me $20 for the book, comma, and he said he would have paid twice as much if it had been a first edition.
Perfect. Trinity, number 5. You with us, Trinity?
I'm here, sorry.
It's okay. Can you answer number 5?
Yeah, I can do it. The very idea of spiders and just even the word spiders terrifies us, comma, and both tend to give us chills. I feel like there would be 2 commas, but I'm not really
Yeah, where
sure.
would you put the other one? You're right.
After spiders.
Yeah, the very idea of spiders and even just the word spiders terrify us and both tend to give us chills. Perfectly done. That was a little bit of a curveball, well handled. And Chastity, can you answer number 6 for me?
Yes. The two types of cats are short-haired, comma, and long-haired. Wouldn't there be a comma right here too? Or
what do you guys think? There's actually not. There's only 1 comma in this one, if that helps. Okay. Where would you put the 1 comma?
By short hair. Ooh. Between short hair and.
That's actually not it. Anyone have a different answer here?
After long-haired.
It would be after long-haired, yeah. The first clause, so the 2 types of cats are short-haired and long-haired. That's 1 clause. That's 1 independent clause because you can't stop it in between. The 2 types of cats are short-haired and long-haired. It sounds kind of funny because you're actually naming 2 things. That's part of 1 thought. So it would be the 2 types of cats are short-haired and long-haired, and each has different grooming requirements. That's the split between the 2 independent clauses. It was a tricky one. Welcome to those of you who joined us a little bit late. We're glad you're here, and you're kind of coming in at a great transition point. So we're about to go into lists and series. Commas are used to separate items or elements when more than two appear in a list. That's the key there, more than two. For the purposes of the ACT, plan to always include what's known as the Oxford comma. It's the one before the conjunction, the and or whatever it is that's introducing the last item in a list. You do want to include that final comma before the and. And just a couple examples here. For the first day of school, I bought notebooks, comma, pencils, comma, pens, comma, and paper. STEM Summer Institute has served students from Butler, Lee, and Johnson. Of course, we would insert commas between Butler and between Lee and. Obviously, that's a little bit of an older slide. We've got some old school school names, but it still works. The ACT tests your ability with an English, math, reading, and science test. We would insert commas between each of those subject areas, of course, and after reading. And why is this important? If you look at the picture here, Jane enjoys cooking her family and her dog. No, we need those commas because commas save a life. And a couple examples here. Remember that commas are used to separate items in a list or series. Kim ordered a large coffee, pancakes, eggs, and hash browns for breakfast. Brandon had homework in geometry, comma, world history, comma, Spanish, comma, and even PE. He must be a virtual student. Azalea lived at home with her parents, comma, her grandma, comma, one brother, comma, one sister, comma, and a dog. Let's try some of these. Again, you can do these out loud or via chat, depending on your microphone capabilities. Let's pick up where we left off. Jakisha, will you answer number one, reading the commas out loud?
Yes. Okay. Old MacDonald raises various livestock, comma, poultry, comma, and some domestic animals on his farm.
Nice, and I love that you paused just to make sure. I mean, maybe that's not why, but I think it's a great idea to pause, make sure you know what you're doing, reading the sentence before. Maya, oops, sorry. Maya, can you give, I'm gonna do just a couple. Maya, can you do number 3 for us?
He stopped by the grocery store to pick up fruit and crackers to bring to the party.
Nice, so no commas being added?
No.
Well done, can't trick her. And then Dylan, I saw you joined us. If your mic works, do you feel confident? Can you try number 5 for me?
Sure, let me get my people screen out of the way. Man, it's everywhere. There we go. Mike snuck into the kitchen, comma, scarfed down some cookies, comma, swept away the crumbs that might give him away, comma, and was out in a flash.
Well done. Those were long clauses. So that one is another tricky one where you might not recognize. That's the kind of one that you're probably going to see most often on the ACT are those long clauses, not long clauses, sorry, long phrases separated by commas because they're really trying to trip you up. Keep in mind that there is no commas when it's just 2 things. So the one Maya did as an example was sort of a distractor choice, trying to trick you. Jamie snuck into the kitchen and scarfed down some cookies. Just 2 things. What did he do? Snuck into the kitchen and scarfed down some cookies, no comma. Her trip abroad was both incredibly enlightening and overwhelmingly exhausting. Again, no comma, it's just 2 things. What was it? Incredibly enlightening and overwhelmingly exhausting. After the speech, which is going to be an introductory phrase, which we're about to cover, that's why there's a comma. After the speech, Congressman and presidential candidate Ford Peterson took some time to answer questions from reporters in the audience. Congressman and president, all good. Those are 2 adjectives, but they're separated with an and, so no comma. 2 descriptors, rather. A comma can come between 2 adjectives, though, when it replaces a conjunction. So in that example, we have Congressman and presidential candidate. That's good, it's covered, we've got the word and. Sometimes you'll see those 2 adjectives that describe the same noun with a comma between them and no conjunction. For example, we enjoyed eating Carla's sweet, delicious cupcakes. Sweet and delicious are both modifying or describing the cupcake, so we put a comma there. You could also do it with an and. We enjoyed eating Carla's sweet and delicious cupcakes. This can just be a quicker, more snappy way to write the sentence. The selfish, arrogant dictator terrorized the people. The water supply was rapidly, dangerously decreasing. Now be careful. The ACT loves to trick you with these by including compound adjectives. Like there was one on a fairly recent ACT test that some of you may have taken, where the two words, it says something like, the men wore sleek, charcoal gray suits. You only need a comma between sleek and charcoal gray, because charcoal gray is actually it's a compound adjective. They belong together. You can't separate them, because charcoal is actually telling us what type of gray. It's not telling us about the suit directly. And then the last thing we're gonna kind of, well, no, this isn't the last, kind of the same thing, just a different way of phrasing it. Modifiers, words or phrases that describe or add detail to another word. Of course, these are just a few more examples. The fish had green, shimmering scales. The girl had long, dark hair. Go ahead and add a comma where there should be one in that second one. Who do I have on here that I haven't called on? Chastity, did you go yet?
Yes.
Go ahead again. Where do you put the comma in that first one? The girl had long dark hair. Where do we need a comma?
I want to say between long and dark, but then again, I don't know.
That's exactly right. You got it.
Okay.
And then Trinity, can you do number 2?
Sorry. The short. Wait a minute. The short, comma, bald man is my teacher.
Perfect. That one was about Mr. Parker, I guess. Just kidding.
Shade. Got Joe.
Shade.
I was just testing to see if you're really with us.
I'm here. I'm here.
Last comma rule we're going to go over, introductory words and phrases. So sometimes you have a phrase at the beginning of a sentence. It can even just be one word that's just kind of set off from the rest of the sentence. This could be a transition or an introduction to a new thought. Commas come after introductory words, phrases, or prepositional phrases that are longer than 5 words. And that sounds complicated, but really it's not, don't worry. Even though I don't like pickles. That's a dependent clause, but we'd consider it this introductory words and phrase because we've got this kind of like lead into the sentence. Even though I don't like pickles, I ate a spoonful of relish when my friend dared me. More often you'll see it like this second one on the ACT, growling and barking. The dog warned the mailman not to come any closer. And I see this type of sentence, like number 2, often in students' personal statements on their college application. It kind of adds a little bit of action. We don't want to overdo it, but this can be a way to kind of make a sentence a little poppier. We add these 2 kind of introductory words that are really getting us excited. Okay, Gabrielle, that's okay. You can watch the recording and do the exit ticket after. As if being grounded weren't enough, her mother also took away her cell phone. So we've got another, these are kind of harder to detect. You really want to do that secret agent mode with these, I would say. This is a good way to, to employ that strategy with. Let's try some. Oh, these are more examples actually, sorry. After we won regionals, the entire basketball team went out for pizza. While I didn't practice the piano much in middle school, I've come to love it now that I'm in high school. And then here's one like that, growling and barking. Running late for school, Marcus didn't brush his teeth this morning. These are ones you could flip-flop typically. So like Marcus didn't brush his teeth this morning because he was running late for school. You can interchange that. They're just doing that verb first. or gerund first to kind of put us in the action. Now let's try some of these. Jakisha, can you go ahead and try, I guess it's labeled as number 4 there. Again, you can feel free to read it first.
Okay, I'll read it first. Okay, sometimes I usually struggle with some of these problems, but I think it is one sweltering Texas day, comma, in 1956, comma, a Dallas gym teacher pondered how to handle a difficult problem.
You did it differently than I was intending. Let me think. One sweltering Texas day. You would actually just need a comma after 1956 in this case. One sweltering Texas day in 1956. A Dallas gym teacher pondered how to handle a difficult problem.
Okay, so you wouldn't need to put one after day?
No. You could, if that in 1956 goes with the introductory clause. It's basically like a setting the scene version of it.
Okay, I got it, because I always miss those questions. I know those are the questions I always miss whenever I'm taking a test, and I write them down, but I never understood why, but I can see now.
Yeah, it actually is kind of hard even for me to think about how to explain why. Let me try the next one with someone else and see if I can think of a better sort of explanation there. Maya, could you try number 5 here on the screen?
It was early morning when my parents and I arrived at the museum, a huge building in the middle of town.
I heard the comma, but where did you put it so that we could draw it in our minds?
After parents.
Oh, no. It sounded like you paused at the exact right spot.
But I didn't know. Is it after museum?
Yeah, it is. This one is kind of a flip-floppy one almost, and it's setting the scene once again. It was early morning when my parents and I arrived at the museum, comma, a huge building in the middle of town. The introductory quote-unquote phrase is actually the second part that's just describing the museum. All of the action occurs in this first part. It was early morning when you got your subject, my parents and I, what did we do? We arrived at the museum. You can't separate my parents and I from arrived, so you can't have any comma in that box. That's like your protected square.
Okay.
These are tough. Darian, can you try number 6?
When singer Ali King Scott sings, comma, everyone listens.
Perfect. And again, we've got that. This is a very short, snappy clause, but you've got a subject, everyone, what do? They listen. Before that, you've got this introductory clause describing what's going on to make everyone listen. These are tough to detect and a little bit of something you just kind of have to get a feel for, which can be frustrating. Just a general ACT tip before we get into some actual ACT practice questions. Approximately half the time when the English test gives you an option that eliminates all punctuation from an underlined portion, that is correct. So the key here is don't be afraid to just throw out punctuation, especially like 100% of the time if a comma or any punctuation separates a noun from its verb, just get rid of it. Any questions here? I'm going to kind of pause before we get into our practice. Questions about like anything we went over, comma rules wise. Okay, let's try some. And I'm going to have you just drop answers in the chat here for these. So we're going to just drop them in the chat for this first one, and then we're going to do some quick breakout groups for a couple other sets of questions. So if you have like a sticky note or anything you want to answer on, feel free, or you can just chat them right in if you're feeling confident. I'll kind of watch for your chats and see which ones we need to talk about. All right, I know there's a lot on the screen, so I'm gonna actually just wait and go to the chat here in about 2 minutes. Take about 2 minutes, then I'm gonna pull up the chat because I think it blocks what you guys are trying to see. Nice. Looks like about 6 or 7 of you have already answered. Take about 1 more minute if you haven't yet. All right, let's take a look. Uh-oh, some mistakes that made me a little tricky, that's okay. Looks like number 2 is the trickiest one so far. I see basically, I think actually everyone got number 1 and number 3. Super. Number 1 is A, no change. My friend and I wanted to go to the beach, so we gathered our change together and got on the bus. You've got that comma before the fanboys, so 2 independent clauses connected by a comma and a conjunction. That's standard. Number 3 also, everyone got. That introductory clause is just one word, next. That's a common transition word. Things like similarly, first, next, last, lastly. Next, comma, my sister and I braided each other's hair. I'm guessing is what it says. Sorry, I blocked myself. But this is one of those where you can't have a comma between my sister and I and braided. That's the subject. My sister and I, it's a compound subject. What did we do? We braided. So you can't have that comma separating there. And you also don't want a comma. Well, yeah, that's the same thing. So the answer there should be D. Let's take a look at number 2. And I see a couple more people drop chat. So let's see if anyone else.
Wait, Ms. Heller, what was the answer for number 1?
Number 1 is A.
Oh, okay. I thought you said D or something.
Number 1 is A, number 3 is D. And we're gonna take a look together at number 2, because that seems to be the tricky one for everyone.
Okay, awesome.
The explorers reached the edge of the forest where they collected water and they decided to set up camp for the night. The answer here is actually A, no change. Who's chatting into me? Oh, okay. We have another guess for C. It's actually A. You don't need a comma here. You've got just 2 items and it's sort of like list-like where what did they do? They collected water and they decided to set up camp for the night. You don't need a comma separating those 2 things that they did. The first introductory clause, that dependent clause, is just telling us what happened. The explorers reached the edge of the forest where they collected water and they decided to set up camp for the night. That actually is a confusing construction of a sentence period, but the answer for 2 should be A there because it's not a list. They're trying to basically make you think it's a list. What did they do? They did all these things. They arrived and they collected water, then they decided to set up camp. But number 1, you've got and, so you've got the conjunction, you don't need a comma, and it's also not a list of 3 things. All right, we're gonna try breakout groups, which I'm pretty excited about. So we're gonna split, let's see how many people we have on here. We'll probably split into 3 just because I have 3 groups available. So each group is gonna get 3 additional ACT practice questions. With your group, agree on an answer for each question and be ready to explain why the answer you agreed on is the best one to the whole group. If you're working from home, so if you're working asynchronously, not along with us live, just use each of the sets to practice independently. So at this point, I'm going to just take us off sharing for a second so that I can get you into groups. I don't know that I can fix it, so if you end up with teachers in your group, maybe they'll help you, maybe they won't.
Hey, Heller, before you put me in a group, I'm getting ready to go.
Okay, that'll work.
All right. Bye, everybody. You're very smart.
Bye, Ms. Waller.
Bye.
I'm actually having a little hiccup. Hold on. How do I get you guys into groups and keep recording? Hang on, hang on. I may have glitched, so maybe we will just do them together. What am I doing wrong here? Okay. I don't think I started the meeting correctly with the groups set up, so I'm just going to go ahead and go back. We can just try these together. And I'd love to have some people explain in our last couple minutes of actual like lesson time. Sorry about that group glitch, my bad. I will do better next time for sure. Let's take a look at a couple, and I want to just pull some specific ones if we're not going to be in groups. Well, let's just do the same thing. Go ahead and drop your answers to these three, and let's talk about them. See a couple chats. I'm going to wait because I think it blocks you guys. So we'll wait till we get about critical mass of answers. The second one is that kind of gerund verb beginning. That typo in B is just a me typo. It's not a real, it's not trying to trip you up. In number 2, my bad. All right, let's check out your answers. I see about 5 people have dropped them. Oh, these are interesting. Okay. Yeah, sorry, Maya. I didn't mean to trick you guys. I was just typing quickly. Maya doesn't want to share her answers. She sends them private. Very sneaky. This is very interesting. Okay. Let's take a look. The first one is a dependent clause to start us off, or you could kind of look at it as an introductory clause or introductory phrase. Okay. Even though she hadn't practiced the piano in years, she still remembered how to play the piece almost perfectly. With that pause, maybe you kind of heard it. You want a comma in between years, even though she hadn't practiced the piano in years. That's our dependent clause. Even though what? She hadn't practiced the piano in years. That's one incomplete thought, followed by an independent clause. She is the subject. What did she do? She still remembered how to play the piece almost perfectly. So number 1, the answer should be C. Oh, no, sorry, D. I'm not looking. A lot of you got that one. Good. Even though she hadn't practiced piano in years, comma, she still remembered. D. Number 2, growing up in Florida in the 1990s. I'm going to look because I know a couple people I tricked. Looks like most people have 2 as well. Growing up in Florida in the 1990s, Sarah developed a deep appreciation for video games. If you're starting to identify those independent clauses, that's a great strategy. So the independent clause begins with Sarah. She's the subject. What did she do? Sarah developed a deep appreciation for video games. So we know, if at all, there's going to be a comma before Sarah. Let's check. Growing up in Florida in the 1990s. Yep, that's an introductory phrase. You've got that gerund, that verb at the beginning, growing, verb ending in an ing. So yeah, those of you who picked D were correct there. Growing up in Florida in the 1990s, comma, Sarah developed a deep appreciation. And then it looks like I saw a question on 3. So I'm gonna actually take a look and see who got this one right and see if they can help us. Let's skim through. Maya got it right. Trinity got it right. Let's see. I feel like both of you have actually shared out a lot. Let's go with Dylan. Dylan, can you explain how you knew that number 3 was C?
Sorry, I was chewing. Let's see. So, for number 3, I knew that you wouldn't put a comma at the end of tourists, because that doesn't, if you just say it, it doesn't sound right. And there's no reason for there to be an apostrophe after the S. So, and it's obviously wrong. So it wouldn't be A already.
Good. Yeah. That was a very non-technical description, but we love to see it. You got it right either way. So D we can eliminate right away. That's great. D throws that curveball apostrophe, which sometimes the ACT will give you those ones where it's like, boom, that's out already. He has it right that you don't need to come after tourists. What he's not really like expressing is that it's because we never, ever separate the subject from its verb. What do the tourists do? They come to Colorado. So we cannot separate tourists from the verb clause, come to Colorado. So we know right away, like he said, A is out. And then what was the other choice here? Thousands, comma, of tourists. That just kind of doesn't make sense. We don't want to separate every winter thousands of tourists. That introductory phrase stops here. So in this case, C is the best answer. Getting rid of all punctuation that is underlined, just like that. Remember, 50% of the time we're going to be doing. What questions do you have before I send you your exit ticket here? And then those of you who want to stay, I'll be here for an extra hour of office hours and additional practice time. Questions before you get the exit ticket? It's very short, so don't worry. I know we only have 3 minutes left. I'm going to send you this exit ticket via the chat. If you're watching at home via recording, the exit ticket will be linked right below this video recording. Here it comes. If there's any kind of glitch or if it doesn't work, please do let me know right away. If it doesn't let you in or anything like that, it's just 3 questions reviewing the comma rules that we went over today. It will self-grade for you, so you'll get your score right away. And then maybe just let me know when you're done, or I can kind of watch it, I guess, too.